Don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room.
On September 30th, Colonel Douglas Krugman resigned his post after serving 24 years in the Marine Corps under 4 different presidents. He said he could no longer take an oath to serve under a commander-in-chief who treats the Constitution like a suggestion. Writing, quote, this president acts as though one election makes 236 years of constitutional order irrelevant. Instead of trying to work within the Constitution or to amend it, President Trump is testing how far he can ignore it.
Señores, algo muy preocupante ha estado ocurriendo durante las últimas semanas en el ejército de los Estados Unidos. Hemos visto cómo altos mandos militares han estado renunciando uno tras otro. Y ojo que no lo han hecho en silencio y tampoco como si fuera el final de sus carreras, sino que lo están haciendo en pleno servicio, en medio de operaciones activas. Lo peor es que muchos lo están haciendo en protesta directa contra Donald Trump. Y esto no es una exageración, es una señal muy clara del estado actual de las Fuerzas Armadas bajo este gobierno. Veamos este reporte.
Morality is very much a personal choice. It's shaped by society, it's shaped by religious beliefs. But for me, the pardon on his first day of his second term of the January 6th rioters, insurrectionists, was a moral line for me. The oath is to defend the Constitution. That group of people tried to storm the Capitol. We're chanting for the death of elected leaders, and we're trying to keep our Congress from performing its constitutional role. So his choice on his inauguration day was a first step that week that led to me to decide by that Friday I was going to retire from the military.
Recientemente, el almirante Alvin Halsey, jefe del Comando Sur de Estados Unidos, presentó su renuncia mucho antes de lo previsto. Hay fuentes internas que señalan que su salida se debe a fuertes tensiones por las operaciones militares que están sucediendo en el Caribe y en América Latina. Especialmente con este tema de los ataques en contra de embarcaciones cerca de Venezuela y de Colombia, ¿no? Las cuales han sido severamente cuestionadas por la comunidad internacional. Y claro, si uno le pregunta a la Casa Blanca sobre estos ataques, bueno, pues nos dan diferentes versiones cada día, ¿no? Vemos un caos total en la cadena de mando. Por eso mismo es que su salida ha encendido todas las alarmas dentro del Pentágono.
New this morning, the military commander overseeing the Pentagon's escalating attacks on boats off Venezuela's coast, that he is retiring. This is barely a year into his time in that role. And one source tells CNN that tensions had been simmering for weeks between Admiral Alvin Halsey and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and that Hegseth did not believe the admiral was moving aggressively enough to take on and target alleged drug traffickers in the Caribbean. There have been at least 6 U.S. strikes on boats, alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. The latest one disclosed just yesterday. Some of the crew on board that boat are believed to have survived that strike. Also this week, President Trump confirmed that he is now authorizing the CIA to operate covertly inside of Venezuela, linked to all of this. But he did stop short of saying that the intent is regime change. Venezuela's president disagrees.
Hamas. Never before had any previous government, since the CIA has existed, publicly said that it was sending the CIA to kill, to overthrow, and to destroy countries.
Pero claro que no ha sido el único, porque pocos días después vimos cómo el coronel de la Marina, Doug Krugman, también presentó su renuncia formal, luego de 24 años de servicio. Bueno, él sí no se anduvo con rodeos. Dejó claro que esta decisión se debía a una profunda preocupación por lo que el país y el ejército se estaban convirtiendo bajo esta administración. Y le cito literalmente lo que dijo: ya no podía servir bajo una cadena de mando que desprecia el juramento constitucional. Denunció el uso excesivo de poderes de emergencia. Denunció la politización del ejército. Y claro, los discursos partidistas de Trump frente a los altos mandos militares.
On September 30th, Colonel Douglas Krugman resigned his post after serving 24 years in the Marine Corps under 4 different presidents. He said he could no longer take an oath to serve under a commander-in-chief who treats the Constitution like a suggestion. Writing, quote, this president acts as though one election makes 236 years of constitutional order irrelevant. Instead of trying to work within the Constitution or to amend it, President Trump is testing how far he can ignore it. If voters and legislators cannot close the gaps in our laws to clarify the limits of presidential power, those who serve our government will continue to struggle. The next president of either party may continue us down this path toward collapse.
Y ojo amigos, lo repito, Krugman no se retiró, simplemente se fue. Eligió dar un paso al costado el pasado 30 de septiembre de 2025, justo el mismo día en el cual Trump y su secretario de defensa Pete Hegseth, o bueno, secretario de guerra como le dicen ahora, dieron ese discurso profundamente polarizante, ¿no?, frente a los líderes militares. Y bueno, al parecer ese fue el punto de quiebre. Krugman lo llamó el momento en el que entendí que esto ya no era el ejército que juré servir. Y es que cabe recalcar que Donald Trump llegó al extremo de hablar sobre utilizar ciudades estadounidenses, entre comillas, demócratas, como zonas de entrenamiento militar. Algo que bien sabemos está completamente fuera de la ley y de hasta el sentido común. Y cuando se le pregunta al presidente del Congreso, Mike Johnson, sobre este tipo de discursos, bueno, pues el hombre se pone a hacer acrobacias verbales olímpicas, con tal de no decir la verdad.
The president also said at the Pentagon yesterday that he wants American cities to be used as training grounds for the American military. Is this the highest and best use of the U.S. military, and is this the right way to train them?
I don't serve in the Pentagon. I run the House of Representatives. And what we need to be talking about today is real harm that the American people are going to feel because of what Chuck Schumer is doing. Let me tell you what's going to be
Well, hold on a second.
today.
As Speaker of the
Women,
House, do you
infants, and children are not
answer
going
the
to have
question?
nutrition
As
programs
Speaker of the
provided.
House, do you believe it's appropriate to use American cities as training grounds for the U.S. military, calling those people in the American cities the enemy within? I'm asking you, as Speaker of the House, do you think that's appropriate?
I'm not going to comment on your characterization of what the president said. I didn't get to see that speech because I was a little busy yesterday. Well, you can take his quotes out of context, which you often do, and I don't think that's fair to the president. I'll tell you what he's done, though. He's put National Guard troops here in D.C. and cleaned up the crime problem. People can walk safely to and from work today because the president takes crime seriously. Some of the big mayors in some of these big blue cities are not, and I think that's probably what he was addressing there. But what we need to talk about right now, speaking of troops, is that they won't be paid right now because the Democrats are playing political games. FEMA is not going to be provided. FEMA services will not be provided that the government is now shut down. If you have flood insurance that you need to renew before the hurricanes come on, you can't do that right now. We have people, critical medical services for veterans and their families. I mean, suicide prevention programs. These are really serious issues that are being caused by the government shutdown. And we need the Democrats to put the politics aside and keep the engines running here. That's critically important for the American people. And it's stunning to me that they're willing to play games like this when they themselves have said, go watch the tape, throughout their entire careers, that this should never be.
Sin duda alguna, todo esto nos revela una realidad inquietante, ¿no? Los oficiales más experimentados ya no ven el problema como algo operativo, sino que es algo moralmente insostenible. Una verdadera acusación interna en contra del liderazgo del trumpismo. Y lo cierto es que esto ya es algo que nos venían advirtiendo. Recordemos que la ex vicepresidenta Kamala Harris lo dijo claramente. Donald Trump admira el control autoritario de los dictadores. Quiere que el ejército obedezca, no que lo respete. Lleva años elogiando la forma en la cual, figuras autoritarias como Putin o como Kim Jong-un manejan a sus fuerzas armadas.
Yesterday, we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired 4-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally, one that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. In just the past week, Donald Trump has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens. And let's be clear about who he considers to be the enemy from within. Anyone who refuses to bend a knee or dares to criticize him would qualify in his mind as the enemy within, like judges, like journalists, like nonpartisan election officials. It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans. All of this is further evidence for the American people of who Donald Trump really is. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room.
Por ello mismo es que figuras como el almirante Halsey, el coronel Krugman y otros tantos están diciendo basta. Decidieron renunciar en señal de protesta, porque ya no quieren ser parte de un sistema que va a romper el juramento constitucional. Y eso, amigos, sinceramente yo creo que debería preocuparnos a todos, porque cuando los hombres y mujeres más leales al país empiezan a darse cuenta y a decir esto no está bien, es porque algo muy grave está pasando dentro. Y bueno, solo quedará esperar cómo veremos más líderes, más militares, más almirantes, generales que se atrevan a alzar la voz. Ahora bien, amigos, justamente tocando este tema de los militares, quiero que hablemos de algo que también está sucediendo dentro del Pentágono. Y es que la gran pregunta que muchos están haciendo en este momento es ¿de qué tiene miedo el Pentágono? Una pregunta que muchos reporteros veteranos que cubren la defensa nacional se están haciendo. Y ojo, porque no es una pregunta menor. Cuando un gobierno empieza a ocultar información, comienza a restringir el acceso a la prensa y bueno, por último hasta decidir qué se puede y qué no se puede mostrar, sabemos que no es por seguridad, es por miedo. Quiero que hablemos de estas nuevas restricciones impuestas por Pete Hegseth, el secretario de guerra, quien ha empezado a limitar el acceso a los periodistas al Pentágono. Lo curioso es que esto ocurre justamente con Estados Unidos, ¿no? Está envuelto en esta polémica militar frente a Venezuela. Mientras la Casa Blanca sigue insistiendo en que se trata de ataques contra narcos terroristas, y ojo, no es que yo esté hablando bien de Venezuela, porque sabemos muy bien la situación en Venezuela, señores. Estamos hablando de las acciones que se está tomando en este momento en Estados Unidos, ¿ok? Bueno, pues mientras tanto, varios senadores, incluyendo el que veremos el día de hoy, el republicano Ron Paul y el demócrata Chris Van Hollen, están advirtiendo que estos ataques podrían llegar a ser considerados, y bueno, para muchos ya lo son, ilegales. ¿Por qué? Simple, no hay autorización del Congreso, no hay transparencia. Y ahora, al parecer, tampoco habrán medios que puedan fiscalizar lo que ocurre. Veamos de qué se trata.
Do you believe that these strikes against these suspected drug boats are legal?
No, they go against all of our tradition. You know, when you kill someone, you should know if you're not at war, not in a declared war, you really need to know someone's name at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence. So all of these people have been blown up without us knowing their name, without any evidence of a crime.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. He also serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, it's great to have you on the show. There's a lot to unpack right now with what is happening around Venezuela. I want to get your thoughts on it. A lot of people believe this administration is agitating for regime change. The president authorizing operations inside of Venezuela through the CIA. There's no legal basis for what is happening now off the coast. If they're attacking narco-terrorists, they're also releasing them back to countries like Colombia and Ecuador. Just give me your read of the situation and whether or not there is an actual effort to try to curb Donald Trump's authority while the government is shut down.
Well, it's good to be with all of you. Look, Senator Rand Paul is spot on. He's exactly right here. There's no legal basis for President Trump to be taking these actions. These are extrajudicial killings. We just heard from the president of Colombia that one of the strikes in late September killed a fisherman, an innocent fisherman. So this is a lawless president at home and also overseas. The answer to your question is we will be having a vote, not this coming week, probably the next week, on a war powers resolution saying that the president cannot essentially go to war and try to take out the Maduro regime without authorization from the Congress. And Senator Paul is part of that, as are some Democratic senators. I strongly support this effort. I would hope Republicans would vote to uphold congressional authorization and war powers, but so far they've been a rubber stamp for Donald Trump.
Senator, one of the other things that Rand Paul said in that clip we just played was, so all of these people have been blown up without any of us knowing their name. Would you back a statutory 30-day mandatory ID disclosure requirement after each strike?
Absolutely, because right now we have, Secretary Hegseth coming out and reporting, sometimes just on social media, that we struck these narco terrorists without providing the public with any evidence. And as the statement from the Colombian president indicated, it apparently is not true. I mean, they don't have the evidence to back this up. They need to present whatever they have. Yes.
Senator, will any legislation include a war powers resolution? Will it include language specifically barring the use of American troops in Venezuela?
Well, I would certainly support legislation barring American troops in Venezuela. If the war powers resolution were to pass, that would trigger all sorts of other reporting requirements. I would certainly support putting that forward. Some of us are talking about it right now, and I do hope that you'd get support large numbers of Republicans to vote to say no American boots on the ground in Venezuela. As you indicated earlier on the show, Trump, he blurted out the fact that he'd signed this secret, not so secret, authorization to go after Maduro. So we know what their goals are, and there's no justification for trying to take out the Venezuelan government without congressional authorization.
And has there been any change with Congress being briefed? Because I know there was supposed to be some briefing about this kinetic activity in the Caribbean, but the briefing was canceled. Has there been any additional disclosure from the Trump administration about what are the rules of engagement and civilian casualty assessments, so to speak?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, no. Certainly the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has not received that briefing. I don't believe the Senate or House Intelligence Committees have received that briefing. And it just goes to underscore your point and the point that we're making, which is that this is an administration that's just going around killing people, literally blowing people out of the water, without any accountability or any kind of transparency. And that is a recipe for continued lawlessness. It's no longer surprising, unfortunately, because we've been seeing this since the beginning of this year. But Republicans have done absolutely nothing, with a very few exceptions, like Rand Paul. On the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, we haven't even had a hearing on the question of the war powers and Venezuela.
Senator, I want to turn now to the Middle East. Just days ago, Americans were celebrating a ceasefire. We heard a lot of talk from world leaders about their hope for a lasting peace. And now the headlines, the reports coming out of Israel and Gaza, it appears the ceasefire may be falling apart, that Israel is blocking aid to the people of Gaza who so desperately need it. Hamas alleging that at least 24 people have been killed. What are we to make of this, and what role is the United States supposed to play now in ensuring that this ceasefire, this lasting peace, is possible again?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's very fragile. You had Donald Trump there in Egypt with the big sign behind him saying peace. But we're a long way from sustainable peace. And if we're going to have any chance of succeeding in the longer run, the United States is going to have to remain involved to keep all the parties' feet to the fire to make sure that the agreement is complied with. And of course, we're still in the very early stages of this. We haven't gotten to the second stage of the agreement, and that in many ways gets even harder. But, you know, I remember when, you know, George Bush was on that aircraft carrier with the sign "Mission Accomplished" behind him during the Iraq War. This is an example of what's happening now on the ground. This is an example of the fact that you got to stick with this. You can't sort of pop the champagne bottles before you really have sustainable peace. And the situation in Gaza, as you know today, is still a place of total wreckage, devastation, and death. And so we've got a long, long way to go.
I want to get your thoughts on this exchange that the president had with Fox Senator about disarming Hamas. Take a listen to it, and I'll get your thoughts on the other side.
Do you believe they really will disarm?
Well, they promised they would. They said they would. If we have to, we'll disarm
the U.S.
Well, whether it's me or the U.S. or it's, you know, a proxy, could be Israel, with our backing, we won't have boots on the ground. There's no reason to.
What do you make of that exchange, Senator? I mean, he says the U.S. may disarm Hamas without having any troops. Do you think he has an understanding of what is happening on the ground and whether or not the U.S. can actually do what he says it's going to do?
Eamon, I don't think the president has ever really had a very good idea of what's happening on the ground in Gaza or what it will require for his sustained involvement if we're going to make sure the ceasefire holds. And of course, the next step is where the president's going to be really needing to put pressure on the parties, especially on the Netanyahu government, when we're talking about establishing Palestinian governance and having that bridge between Palestinian governance in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. We have a long, long way to go here, and we will be finding out whether or not the president and his team were actually serious about the 20-point document or whether they, in the end of the day, were just looking for that first moment. Look, I'm glad we have a ceasefire. I'm glad the hostages, the living hostages, have been returned. All of that is good, but we will be condemned to a very dark future if the president doesn't really get involved on a sustained basis here in his team.
Senator, I have one quick question I want to sneak in about Russia, Ukraine. Trump recently mentioned selling Tomahawks to Ukraine and then walked it back. Is that something that is seriously on the table, and is that something that he can actually do without Congress?
Well, the president, in my view, has been played by Vladimir Putin from day one. I mean, he brought Zelensky into the Oval Office and dressed down the Ukrainians and essentially gave Vladimir Putin a pass. And then, of course, they had that summit meeting in Alaska, and Putin left that meeting and escalated his attacks against Ukraine. And so the president has failed in every one of the goals that he has set so far. Let's see what happens in this upcoming meeting that's supposed to take place in Hungary. But if past his prologue, Donald Trump will be played once again And our European allies, you know, they have their poker faces, but everything I hear is that they are extremely and understandably nervous about the lack of leadership here and the terrible messages that are being sent to Vladimir Putin, that he can act with impunity.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, that was awesome.
Ok, señores, esto resume perfectamente lo que muchos en Washington están empezando a temer. Que el gobierno de Donald Trump está actuando fuera de la ley y sin ningún tipo de supervisión. Aquí es donde entra la parte más peligrosa, ¿no? Que es este tema de Pete Hegseth. No solo está defendiendo estas acciones, sino que además está decidido a restringir por completo el acceso a los medios al Pentágono. Hablamos de periodistas que llevan años cubriendo la defensa nacional, reporteros con trayectoria, credenciales, con fuentes dentro del ejército. No sé si es que cuando ven ustedes noticias y hay una fuente anónima, es eso mismo. Bueno, pues están siendo excluidos de las conferencias, son ignorados en las rondas de preguntas. Es más, en algunos casos, directamente bloqueados de los canales oficiales de información. ¿Y por qué? Pues bueno, no hay que ser adivino para entenderlo. Por hacer preguntas incómodas. Ahora parece ser un acto de traición. Preguntar si es que estos ataques en Venezuela tienen alguna base legal ya no es periodismo, ¿no? Al parecer, ahora es deslealtad. Lo cierto es que si algo nos ha demostrado la historia en Estados Unidos, cuando el gobierno empieza a esconderse detrás de la palabra, la famosa palabra, seguridad nacional, para justificar el silencio, es porque algo oscuro está ocurriendo. Solo hay que fijarse en el patrón. Donald Trump ordena ataques sin autorización del Congreso. El Pentágono evita responder preguntas. Y justamente cuando los periodistas comienzan a presionar, lo sacan del juego. O sea, esto no es una simple política de comunicación. Es la clásica estrategia de controlar la narrativa y al final evitar rendir cuentas. Y claro, seguramente hay quienes dirán, bueno, pero si son operaciones contra narcoterroristas, ¿por qué no dejarlos actuar? Y ahí está el punto. Porque no hay transparencia. No se sabe si realmente son narcoterroristas. El mismo senador Van Hollen mencionó un caso, ¿no? Donde un pescador colombiano inocente fue asesinado en uno de esos ataques. Como les digo, no se trata de si está bien o está mal lo que están haciendo, sino que no existe la transparencia. No están demostrando, no están justificando. ¿Quién responde por eso? Nadie. No hay evidencia, no hay transparencia y ahora tampoco hay periodistas que puedan investigar. Imaginen eso. Algunos defensores de Trump han intentado justificar estas restricciones, ¿no? Diciendo que por culpa de los medios se filtra información sensible, pero seamos honestos. Los grandes medios del Pentágono, o sea, yo les hablo de los veteranos que cubren defensa, saben perfectamente qué pueden publicar y qué no. Porque si publican algo que realmente está en la etiqueta de información sensible, amigos, ya no vuelven a ser periodistas. Esto no tiene que ver con seguridad, tiene que ver con control político. Donald Trump y Pete Hegseth ya no quieren periodistas en la sala, quieren propagandistas. Y en ese sentido, bueno, pues lo que estamos viendo es la consolidación de un modelo de comunicación donde solamente vamos a escuchar una voz, y es la del presidente. Así de simple. Pero bueno, señores, ¿qué opinan ustedes? Y les hago la pregunta. ¿De qué tiene miedo el Pentágono? ¿De los enemigos externos? ¿De los periodistas que podrían exponer lo que realmente está pasando? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.